Okay, folks. So why is long-term care and how it can apply to you so important? Well, to completely wrap your head around the answer to that question, you have to understand what the state of affairs is in the U.S. when it comes to long-term care and where that may be leading us. Did you know that Medicaid, which is a joint health program for low-income individuals that is funded jointly by our federal and state governments, spent approximately $135.8 billion on long-term care services in 2020, which was an increase of around $6 billion over the previous year. And that California, New York, and Pennsylvania, our very own state, had the highest long-term care expenditures. Woo! We came at the top of not such a good list. Also, since Medicaid accounted for 7% or $462 billion, hold on a second, folks. Got to do something. Hold on. Yeah, $462 billion of all federal outlays in 2020. That means that long-term care makes up roughly 1/3 of the federal Medicaid budget, and most likely a larger percentage of each state's Medicaid budget as well. Since our federal government covers up to 60% of all nursing home residents and roughly 50% of all costs for long-term care services and support in each state. So, where is this all leading to? Well, some states have found that the cost of long-term care has gotten to be so burdensome on the state's budgets that they've actually created a new tax to fund it. In fact, in Washington state, legislators approved a public long-term care insurance program in 2019 that would be paid for by an annual payroll tax surcharge of 0.58% of each worker's wages. In return for this tax, each person who paid in would be eligible for public long-term care insurance benefits of up to $36,500 per year, which will begin in 2025. However, there was one caveat that they made at the last minute. It was a last minute change to the law that stated that the only way that residents could opt out of having to pay the tax is if they purchased private long-term care coverage by November 1st, 2021. Also, according to an article dated November 1st, 2021, on the Long-Term Care News website, there are currently 12 other states that are considering implementing a long-term care tax very similar to the one that was passed and went into effect in January 2022 in Washington state. Now, currently PA is fortunately not one of them, but New Jersey is. You can certainly see how it is a possibility for us all to have to seriously consider private long-term care coverage in the not too distant future. And all of this is not even to mention that the Medicaid income and asset rules, if you're in need of public long-term care coverage, could definitely cause hardship to your spouse and your heirs under certain circumstances, which we will discuss in detail in a minute. But before we do that, I want to thank each of you for attending our webinar today. Our topic is understanding long-term care and how it may apply to you. My name is Brian Dougherty of PLC Financial Solutions, and I'm your host along with my beautiful, wonderful partner in business and life, Rachel Dougherty. Where are you, Rachel?
I'm here. I'm just having trouble with my camera, but I'll be here.
Okay, well,
Sorry.
Say hi, Rachel.
Hi.
He's there. Rachel will be our moderator for it. She'll be handling all of our comments and questions as we move along. Folks, I must tell you that we're so excited to be presenting this extremely important topic to you today. It's been quite a while now that long-term care has been a very special interest to us because we feel like so many retirement plans can and have been derailed as a result of catastrophic long-term care events for so many people in our country. But let me just see something here. Yes. Can you see me, Rachel?
Yep, you're there.
All right. Just making sure for the recording. But before we get started, let's take care of some general housekeeping first. One, if the screen is not big enough for you, you can click on the view options drop down at the top right of your screen to make it larger. Two, also, you'll see that there are two boxes at the bottom of your screen. One's called chat, the other's called comments. And then the one is for your questions and your answers. And the other's just for comments. And you're going to see that we're going to ask for a few of them. Please use them accordingly, and Rachel will respond to them in kind. Also, I'm sure that many of you will have questions about the material that we're covering today. But since we have a good bit of material to cover and only an hour to cover it, I'm going to ask you to put them in the comments and questions in those boxes below at the end. We'll be staying for some extra time to cover as many of them as possible. However, if we don't cover yours, we'd be happy to answer it by either email or even a 15-minute Q&A phone call scheduled at another time. And Rachel will be putting that link up too at the end as well. Next thing, this webinar is being recorded and it will be sent to everyone who is attending tonight. So don't worry about missing anything. You'll have plenty of time to check it out again at your convenience. Also, because we want to make sure that you're all paying attention and because we'd like you to have some fun as well, before we answer any questions, we have a 6-question quiz for you at the end. And the first person to answer each question correctly inside the comment box will win a $10 gift card to the store of their choice. So make sure you have a notebook handy to jot down some brief notes related to some special bullet points that I'll point out as we go along. Finally, it's my obligation as a financial advisor and a fiduciary to inform you of our RIA's disclaimer statement, which is that our investor advisory services are offered through Fusion Capital Management, an SEC registered investment advisor, and we only transact business in states where we are properly registered or are excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Now, SEC registration is not an endorsement of our firm by the commission and does not mean that our advisors have attained a specific level of skill or ability. And most importantly, all investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. So now that we got that over with, I have one for you as usual. What did the plate say to his friend? Tonight, dinner's on me. All right. I did not get that from my kids. That one I got from the internet today, but as always, I will keep the day job. All right. Moving right along. So, how likely are you to need long-term care? Well, even though it can vary over time dramatically and continues to change over time, here are some statistics to consider. Someone turning 65 today has almost a 70% chance of needing some type of long-term care services and support in their remaining years. 50% of women and 47% of men will need long-term care in their lifetimes. Women need long-term care for an average of 3.7 years and men for 2.2. While 1/3 of today's 65-year-olds may never need long-term care support, 20% will need it for longer than 5 years. So if I told you that you had a 70% chance of winning in one casino and a 30% chance of winning another, which one would you choose? That's a pretty silly question, right? Okay. Okay. So let's look at some of the facts related to the different types of elderly care that are available today. First, you got home-based care. Now, that's homemaker services. Nationally, the median daily rate charged by a non-certified but licensed home care agency for homemaker services is $141 a day. Now, homemaker services include things like housekeeping, cooking, and running errands. Now, home health aid services, nationally, the median daily rate charged is $144 a day. Now, home health aids provide assistance with activities of daily living, aka ADLs. But no medical care. And then there's community-based care, otherwise known as adult day health care. Nationally, the median daily rate charged for adult day health care, which provides therapeutic, social, and other supportive services in a community-based setting, is $75 a day. And then, of course, there's facility-based care, starting with assisted living facilities. Nationally, the monthly median rate for a private one-bedroom unit in an assisted living facility is $4,050 a month, which is an average annual cost of $48,600. And these rates exclude one-time community or entrance fees. Okay, bullet point. Remember, bullet point. Nursing homes. Nationally, the median annual rate for a single occupant private room is $102,200 per year. Remember, I said that, $102,200 per year. That's $85,017 a month. Now, the median annual rate for a semi-private room is not much less, $90,155 per year, or $7,513 a month. Considering that the average length of stay in a nursing home is 2.5 years, the total cost for an average stay today for all that time would be about $225,000 to $255,000. For many, this expense could easily consume a lifetime of savings. Others may not be able to cover it at all. Also, the Genworth study that provided these statistics also tracked the historical trends of their costs, which in general tend to increase each year. Based on these historical trends, it's possible that the cost of the most expensive levels of long-term care will, in 15 years or so, will be roughly 1.5 times that it is today. So if someone who is in need of long-term care services today is either unconfident that they will be able to afford the cost of long-term care, or originally thought that they could, but starts to think that they're going to run out of money as a result of their needs, then they'll need to file a claim with Medicaid. And then they'll need to start playing by the Medicaid rules. And the first rule that most people will be introduced to is called the spend down rule. And there are two main clauses in their rules that explain or define how this works. Medicaid long-term care spend down rule clause will actually have these two parts. Part one, since Medicaid is the largest public source of funding for long-term care in the United States and is funded and administered through federal and state efforts, contrary to many people's beliefs when it comes to long-term care, Medicaid is not available to everyone who needs long-term care services. It's available only to certain low-income individuals and this is the really important part, and families who fit into particular eligibility groups. Those who apply to Medicaid for payment of long-term care services must meet both the financial and functional eligibility criteria to qualify. Bullet point coming up, bullet point. The financial criteria to qualify often requires recipients to spend down, remember that, spend down their assets to become what Medicaid considers to be sufficiently needy. Now, here's part two. However, that part two does mention that there are rules that allow preserving assets for healthy spouses to prevent spousal impoverishment, which we'll discuss in a few minutes. As you can see, folks, Medicaid does not just look at things as they relate to the individual if need when it comes to who's responsible to pay these needed services. They look at it as a family responsibility. So let's dig in a little deeper when it comes to that. So what does it take for Medicaid to consider you medically needy? Well, you must meet three criteria. The first, you must belong to a group that your state has defined as a Medicaid eligible group, categorically needy or medically needy, for example. Second, you must have a medical or functional need, an impairment that limits your ability to perform activities of daily living and require either institutionalized care or the level of care given in an institution, but are able to receive it in the home and or in the community. And finally, your income and assets, and this is the big one, must be at or below specified levels. And we're going to talk about them. These levels vary depending on which eligibility group you're in and where the long-term care is received, in the home, the community, or in a nursing home facility. However, regardless of these variables, the financial requirements that apply to Medicaid coverage for long-term care services are strict and may subject individuals to divert the bulk of their income to the cost of their care and to spend down the majority of their assets to the point of being considered impoverished. Medicaid considers this to be a process of what they call self-impoverishment. I don't know about you, but I don't particularly care for those two words in combination. I'm okay with them separately, but not so much together. The idea of self-impoverishment somehow goes against all that I've worked for my entire life and want no parts of, if I can avoid it, of course. And I am sure that most of you would concur. Again, bullet point. So, what is the process of what Medicaid calls spend down? Well, it's simply the process of depleting private or personal resources in order to become eligible for Medicaid. Thus, entering a nursing home or obtaining long-term care services by initially paying the costs out of pocket until you essentially run out of money. Then you can apply for Medicaid once you've depleted all of your resources to the point of meeting the Medicaid eligibility requirements, which will place you and your spouse at the government poverty level. As you can see, folks, this is some serious stuff and should be given deep consideration far in advance in order to avoid these circumstances as much as possible. So now let's look at clause 2 of the Medicaid spend down rule. It breaks down the bottom line when it comes to who Medicaid long-term care benefits are intended for in 3 simple sentences. One, it's for those with low incomes. Two, it's for those who incur catastrophic medical expenditures. That's where most people fall in. Third, it's for those with minimal assets. Now, in short, when it comes to minimal assets, this means that to be eligible, recipients must meet 3 basic qualifications. Their income, both individually and the spouse as well, cannot exceed certain limits. 2, their medical expenses have to be beyond their ability to pay for. And finally, they have to have spent down their assets on their medical, long-term care needs to the point of self-impoverishment, which Medicaid clearly defines. Okay, let's get a little more granular when it comes to the details related to the income and asset limits for both Medicaid applicants and the non-applicant and their non-applicant spouses, also referred to as by Medicaid as the community spouse. So these are the Medicaid long-term care income rules. For the applicant spouse, this is the person that will be going into not necessarily a home, but into needing long-term care paid by Medicaid. First, you must divert the bulk of your income to the cost of your care. Second, in most states, your income must be at or lower than 300% of the supplemental security income limit to qualify. Now, in 2022, that supplemental security income limit is $841 a month. So 300% of that, or 3 times that, is $2,541 a month. So just to qualify, you have to be at or below that on one level. Okay, third, you must contribute almost all available income towards the cost of care for Medicaid to pay the rest. Fourth, and here's another bullet point, you will only be permitted to retain a nominal amount of your income each month. And this is stunning, which is no more than $30 or $50 each month. And that's the exact wording, $30 or $50. Oh, Rachel, you're there. Got the camera working. Nice. As you can see, these income rules are pretty strict and don't leave much for anything or anyone else. $30 or $50 a month is the most they'll allow you to keep in income. So what types of income does Medicaid count towards eligibility? In other words, what are the types of income that must go towards paying for your medical needs? Well, it covers most types of income, as you'll see. Wages, I don't know who's going to be working when they're doing that, trying to get into a long-term care facility, but who knows? Certain deductions are allowed with that. Investment interest, investment income, which means interest and dividends from savings and investments. Social Security benefits count. Veterans benefits, pensions, IRA income, and rental income. As you can see, most income is counted for the use towards the needs. Now, what is the income that is not counted towards eligibility? When you look at these, you can pretty much understand right away why they aren't counted. And here's another bullet point. Remember your notes. So first is temporary aid to needy families. They don't count that. The program that replaced a program that was called Aid to Families with Dependent Children. So that is not counted. Supplemental security income, which is SSI, that's not counted. Food stamps are not counted. Low-income home energy assistance program benefits, a program that helped pay the heating and cooling bills of low-income and elderly people. Geez, they're really, nice for letting them keep that, huh? Foster care payments, certain housing or utility subsidies. Now, I'm not going to ask for all these, but at least one. Okay. So they were the income rules for the applicant spouse. Now let's look at the rules, the income rules for the non-applicant spouse. This is the spouse that doesn't need care from Medicaid. The first, federal law permits the community spouse, which is what they refer to the non-applicant spouse as, to maintain a higher income for support, which is also called the minimum monthly maintenance needs allowance, right? So there's a certain minimum amount they're going to let the spouse keep, also known as the MMMNA. It's not the MMA, the MMMNA. Second, in 2022, community spouses can keep at least $2,178 in monthly income, or up to a maximum of $3,435 a month at the state's option, essentially between 200 and 300% of the federal poverty limit. Again, third, any income the community spouse receives in their own name, Social Security income, pension income, or dividend income, for example, may be retained fully by the community spouse. And then they also have a rule which is called the check, whose name is the check-in rule. And so if you can get the check in the spouse's name, they don't count it, which is sometimes difficult, especially if it's an IRA or something like that, because it's an individual account. So that covers all the income rules for both the applicant and non-applicant spouse. Now let's look at the details related to both of them as it pertains to their assets. Here are the rules for Medicaid's long-term care spend down on assets. All money and any property that can be valued and turned into cash is a countable asset unless it is specifically exempt. If the value of total countable assets exceeds the Medicaid eligibility limit, the applicant must spend down these assets to the limit before Medicaid assistance is available. We're going to talk about what those limits are. Certain allowances are made for married couples that enable a community spouse to retain countable assets up to a certain limit, and we'll discuss them. So, what exactly is Medicaid's asset/resource requirement or limit for the applicant spouse? Well, brace yourself for this one, folks. It's bare bones. And it's a bullet point, okay? They are not permitted to have any more than $2,000 or, exact words, or $3,000 in countable assets to be eligible for assistance. That's it. That's how much you had to have in your savings, $2,000 or $3,000. I don't know how they make their mind up on that. I'm sorry, he's got $2,025. We can't make him eligible. All right. Now, I'm still, either way, it's like splitting hairs when someone gets down that low in assets, and with the allowable income limit of only $30 to $50, of course, again, wondering where they draw the line there, a month, I don't think these assets will be lasting very long anyway. So I don't know why it even matters. Basically, they're saying you can't have any money, in my opinion. So here are what Medicaid considers to be countable or non-exempt assets. Again, meaning that these types of assets must be used to spend down on an applicant's medical needs. Also, there seems to be no surprises on this list either. Cash, checks and savings accounts, certificates of deposits and money market accounts, stocks, mutual funds, bonds, and other investment holdings, IRAs, KIOs, and other retirement funds, and non-resident property. So if you have a vacation home, anything you own and you're not a resident at. So here are the non-countable or exempt assets. As you can see, again, they leave no stone unturned here either. First of all, they don't count the primary residence. Medicaid long-term care applicants' principal home is exempt as long as the equity value in the home is less than $500,000 or up even as much as $750,000 at the state's option. The exempt value of the primary residence is unlimited if the applicant has certain family members living there, such as a spouse, a child, or children under age 21, or a blind or permanently disabled child. A car, you get one car of any value is exempt if used by the household member, by any household member. You got household belongings, including like furniture, appliances, and similar types of items. Personal possessions like some jewelry, clothing, similar items. Just I wonder if you have like $1 million diamond necklace, and then yeah, that would be, they might find that out, right? Now, this is splitting hairs. Burial contracts, they're letting you keep them. Irrevocable with a value of $5,500 or less. Geez, I mean, that's I think they might need to update that because these days I think they cost more. The base amount costs more than that. And for revocable contracts with a value of $1,500 or less. You show me a burial contract of $1,500, maybe for a urn. However, the allotted values of the burial contracts are actually up to each state individually. In many states, the value of the burial contract must be reduced by the cash value of any life insurance policy. So, they're really splitting hairs. If it's worth, say, $10,000 and you had a life insurance policy of $5,000, you got to reduce that much off of it. So now it's $5,000. So burial plot for the applicant and the immediate family includes the purchase of or a prepayment of the following items: a grave site, opening and closing of a grave site, cremation urn, casket, out or burial container, headstone or marker. Cash value life insurance is exempt as long as it doesn't exceed $1,500 or $3,000. Come on, in value. So as you can see, folks, Medicaid gets pretty granular when it comes to what they count and what they do not count. However, I am not too sure how they would go about getting the excess value of a burial contract from the applicant. But I'm pretty sure they must have figured out some way to do it. Now, let's talk about the spousal rules as it pertains to assets. The community spouse can retain half or more of the couple's combined assets, subject to state and federal minimum and maximum limits. So what are those limits? Well, all states must allow the community spouse to keep all accountable assets up to a certain minimum. 2022, that minimum is $27,480. So if you have that much or less, they have to let you keep it all. And up to half of assets if they exceed that limit. Up to a maximum for 2022 of $137,400. Anything over that, the community spouse cannot keep. It has to go towards care. A few states allow the community spouse to keep up to the full maximum amount, regardless of whether it's more than half of a couple's combined countable assets. Okay, here's a bullet point. So as it turns out, what Medicaid considers countable and non-countable assets when you're alive is different than when you're dead. That's because after you've passed away, they have something called, and remember this, estate recovery. Estate recovery. And it is a process that they use to be able to recover more assets than they could when a person was alive, which means that both exempt or non-countable assets, while a recipient was living, are not necessarily protected in the future because upon their death, they reserve the right to take from the estate the amount it is paid for the care of that person when they were alive, which I guess you really can't blame them for. Let's take a look at the rules for that. So when it comes to estate recovery, here are the rules and procedures. First, after the death of an unmarried Medicaid recipient. So someone's unmarried. Once they pass, they could take whatever wasn't there, whatever they couldn't take, like the house valued at $500,000 or less, now they can take it. After the death of a surviving spouse, so if the surviving spouse was living there and they passed, then they can take the things that they couldn't take before. When the Medicaid recipient has no surviving children under the age of 21, that's a little tricky because you got kids going to college and whatnot. You know, they're not necessarily, a child is not necessarily independent after 21 years old. So if they're living at your house, that could be a tough road. When the Medicaid recipient has no surviving children of any age who are blind or totally disabled. So I would imagine that they would have to pass. Basically, this process was created to ensure that Medicaid gets every single dollar it can get from your estate once you and your dependents are gone, which, given the cost of long-term care, is not really something that you can blame them for doing, really. However, if you are interested in leaving a legacy of any type to your children or heirs, it definitely makes sense to plan in advance to do so. Okay, now that we've discussed all the rules and restrictions when it comes to receiving Medicaid-based long-term care coverage through our state and federal governments exclusively, let's discuss some of the incentives that the government has to offer to people who have gone the extra mile to put a plan together to help pay for their own long-term care needs. Well, in 1992, the first long-term care partnership program started. It was called the Qualified State Long-Term Care Partnership Program, and it originated in 4 states: California, Connecticut, Indiana, and New York. It was a partnership program developed between insurance companies and state governments to find a solution to the problem of the ever-rising long-term care costs. It's a program that exists because leaders in government, the insurance industry, and consumer interest groups came together to solve the long-term care dilemma that's grown to become a major budgetary stress on our states and federal government's balance sheets. However, in 1993, the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act, also known as OBRA, prevented the expansion of these programs to additional states. But then in 2005, the Deficit Reduction Act, DRA, was passed. And many states were able to start to develop their own long-term care partnership programs between insurance companies and state governments. Most of them have them now. Here's how they work. First, it's a partnership program that joins, losing my voice. It's a partnership program that joins a state's Medicaid program with private insurance companies that offer long-term care insurance policies. The state's Medicaid program's eligibility requirements are adjusted to provide financial incentives for residents to purchase private long-term care insurance coverage. If the insured requires long-term care services and their long-term care policy pays out its benefits, then in the event the insured continues to need care after the policy benefits are exhausted, or the cost of his or her care exceeds the policy benefit level, he or she can then apply for Medicaid, and the standard asset limits that the state Medicaid program would otherwise impose on them, the ones we just talked about, will not apply to them anymore. So just for getting insurance, now these rules don't apply to you anymore. This means that they or their family will be able to keep assets equal to the amount of the benefits their long-term care policy provided. Plus, as an extra bonus, these assets are exempt from the Medicaid estate recovery upon their death as well. So, this is great news for people who would like to protect their assets for their spouses and their heirs in the future from a catastrophic long-term care situation. At the same time, put themselves in a position to pay for most, if not all, of their long-term care needs. Note, to mention, I do want to mention one important fact that is not well advertised when it comes to qualifying for Medicaid-based long-term care. Not all nursing homes and nursing home facilities accept Medicaid coverage. So you must attain service from a long-term care facility that accepts it. And sometimes they can be in areas that are more inconvenient for your family to visit, or they may not be 100% up to the standard that you would want for yourself. But for the most part, they are pretty well taken care of. Okay, now that we've discussed most of the challenges when it comes to long-term care and how our state governments have incentivized us to do something about it, let's now discuss some of the solutions that I've come across that I find to be the most helpful when it comes to long-term care coverage. Here are the most popular types of long-term care solutions for you to consider and why. The first is called this just typical standard long-term care policy. This is the type of policy that most people know about, where you pay X amount per year and you're guaranteed a certain benefit amount per month for a predetermined length of time. We'll look at how this pays out and the pros and cons of this type of solution in a minute. Second is something called long-term care / life insurance hybrid coverage. This is a combination of both long-term care coverage and life insurance. It will also allow you to pay a certain amount per year for a predetermined amount of long-term care benefits every month, but it also will allow your beneficiaries to receive a lump sum payment if you don't ever use the policy, or if you only collect from it partially. I personally think this is attractive because many people don't like the fact that when you pay into a standard long-term care policy, if you pass away prior to using it, then your beneficiaries don't receive anything. So it seems like you wasted your money on it over, all those years. We'll also take a deeper look at how this works and at the pros and cons of this type of solution as well. Third is what's called a long-term care / annuity insurance hybrid policy. This hybrid solution works very close to the same as the long-term care life insurance solution, except that it's usually funded using either cash or non-qualified assets. Then once the funds are in the annuity, then a long-term care rider is added to it that will provide X amount of long-term care benefits over a certain period of time after the base principal assets are used up for long-term care. This is usually when an applicant has more substantial health issues and can't qualify for long-term care life policy. So this is the one that most clients that I've usually try to go for the long-term life policy first. It's a little less expensive. You get more bang for your buck. But it is like buying life insurance, and you do have to qualify. This one you don't have to qualify quite as much for. And the final one is also known as a Medicaid compliant annuity, which allows a Medicaid applicant to lower his or her countable assets down enough to meet the Medicaid asset limit, which is between, like I said, $2,000 and $3,000. By converting those assets into an income source that can then be used towards the Medicaid applicant, or in some cases, the non-applicant spouse's income limit rules, which are generally much more generous than the asset limit rules are. Okay, so now let's take a look at how these solutions work and at the pros and cons for them. So starting with the standard long-term care policy, like I said before, you'll pay X amount per year and you are guaranteed a certain benefit amount per month for a predetermined length of time. For example, I have a client who had these type of policies before we met, and they were paying roughly $3,000 a year each. And they had, had they needed to use it, they would have received right around $5,000 a month for 3 years each toward their long-term care expenses before the policy ended. However, if they had passed away before ever using the policy, it would have become null and void, and they would have to end up spending the money on it just for the peace of mind that they got to enjoy while they were still alive. Now, the reason we ended up reviewing their policies this year is because out of nowhere, they got a notice in the mail saying that after 8 years of paying on them, their premiums were being increased by 44% starting on the anniversary date. The wife's policy alone was currently costing $120 a month, so it was going up to $173 a month. Not to mention that it was likely that they were going to continue to increase as they got older and closer to needing them. So let's look at the pros and cons for this standard long-term care. Pros, very affordable at first. Second, the monthly benefit amount is definitely good compared to what they cost. They usually qualify for state partnership programs. They pay for home health care, assisted care, and nursing home care. Premiums can be tax deductible if you're still itemizing. Anything over 10% of your adjusted gross income. Benefits are non-taxable. So when you get those payments, which is the case with all of them. Remember. The cons, premiums are susceptible to increases indefinitely, so they don't cap them. There's a lot of inflation in healthcare, and so they leave them open-ended. The benefit periods are finite, so you could need more care at the end than they'll actually pay for. So if they're going to pay for 3 years and you need care for 4 or 5, then you got to come out of pocket or file for Medicaid long-term care. If you die, you never get anything for your money except the peace of mind that you had when you were alive. Next, let's look at the long-term care life insurance hybrid solution. First, premiums can be paid periodically or in a lump sum single premium. Benefits can be either for a certain period of time or over a lifetime. They actually have options where they'll actually pay you a benefit throughout your whole life, depending on how you set it up. Third, it has a death benefit that will return all or most of the premiums to your beneficiaries when you die, and it's tax-free. Next, policies are usually owned jointly with the life insurance paying out when the second insured passes away. Don't have to be though. That's an option. Next, both insured can receive benefits of the same amount for either the same period of time or for a lifetime at the same time if needed. So they'll actually pay double if both are in need of care at the same time. As an example, recently clients of mine have committed to moving 150,000 other assets into a long-term care life plan. She's 66 and he's 65. And once they are approved, they will both be covered for $5,000 a month each for the rest of their lives, regardless of how much care they need or what type of care they need, or another client of mine, age 66, pays $591 a month. And she too is covered for $5,000 a month of tax-free income to pay her long-term care costs for the rest of her life. Plus, if any of them were to die without using the policy, their heirs will receive a death benefit either at the invested amount or up to around 80% of it tax-free. So let's look at the pros and cons of this solution. Pros: the premium is a fixed amount for your life. Can't go up. That can be paid either monthly, quarterly, biannually, annually, or in a single lump sum amount. Next, benefits can be either for a set period of time or for a lifetime. Next, it pays for just about all types of elder care expenses like home health care, assisted care, nursing home care, hospice, and adult daycare. All or most of the premiums can be returned to the beneficiaries upon their death if the long-term care policy is never used. Full benefits can be paid to both insured and at the same time and indefinitely. Oh, goodness. Oh. And indefinitely. Okay. Let's go over the cons. Costs roughly 2 to 2.5 times more for lifetime benefits than standard finite long-term care plan costs. Costs roughly 1.5 times more for a non-lifetime benefit for the standard long-term care. Okay. This is the long-term care annuity solution hybrid. It's usually cash or non-qualified assets to be used for this type. Can be qualified assets to be used if needed, but it's not preferred. A long-term care rider is added to it to provide X amount of long-term care benefits over a certain period of time. Underwriting is minimal due to no life insurance involved. It's usually applied for when an applicant has more substantial health issues and can't qualify for long-term care life policies. The pros: premiums are fixed amounts, can be paid periodically or in a lump sum. Benefits can be paid either over a set period of time or for a lifetime. It pays for most types of elderly care, like we said, same as the other: home health care, assisted care, nursing home, hospice, adult daycare. All or most of the premiums can be returned to beneficiaries upon their death. The policy is never used. Again, full benefits can be paid out for both. The long-term care portion of the premium is tax deductible. Again, if it's over 10% of your AGI, and the base benefits tax-free if spent on long-term care expenses. So any money you get out of it to pay for your long-term care, it's tax-free. All the long-term care rider benefits are non-taxable. The cons: this costs roughly about 8 to 10% more than long-term care life, the long-term life plan. Finally, this last solution is not a solution made to ensure the cost of long-term care expenses directly. Rather, it is for someone who, for whatever reason, did not or could not plan in advance for them to be covered by long-term care insurance, and now is faced with needing their long-term care expenses to be paid, at least partially, by Medicaid. It was created for them to be able to avoid having to spend down the lion's share, all but $3,000 of their assets in order to meet Medicaid's long-term care qualifications. And it's called a Medicaid compliant annuity. It allows a Medicaid applicant to reduce some or all, depending on how much they have, of their countable assets, thus allowing them to meet Medicaid's asset limits of no more than $3,000. It does this by converting the assets, say it could be $300,000, and you're only allowed to have $3,000. If you turn that, put that into one of these Medicaid compliant annuities and convert it into an income source, then that can then be used toward the Medicaid applicant or non-applicant spouse's income limit rules. So you go from applying it to the asset rules to now using it to be applied to the income rules, which are currently $2,382 a month for the applicant and $2,115. And actually, these are the lower ones. It's actually, it's $2,300. What was that? I have to look that. I said it earlier. This is from 2000, last year, 2021. It was $2,382, just a couple of dollars more now. And it's like $3,435 a month for the maximum for the non-applicant spouse, respectively. So as you can see, these income limits are much more generous than the asset limits are, which is a nice thing. This is because most assets, even retirement accounts in some states that are actually owned separately by each spouse, are considered jointly owned by Medicaid. Since income is not, this is what makes this type of annuity such a great option. It converts non-exempt assets into non-countable income for a Medicaid applicant, or even for their non-applicant spouse, giving them a set income while at the same time meeting Medicaid's asset limits, especially when you take into consideration the name on the check rule. Remember I mentioned that? Which Medicaid uses to determine whose income source it is. So, in a nutshell, here are some bullet points and pros and cons related to it. It can convert Medicaid countable assets into non-countable income. It also is excluded from the Medicaid 5-year look-back rule, which is awesome because you can't transfer assets to another person going back 5 years. Are they still going to count them, Medicaid? Next, it must be set up to pay out the full amount of the annuity over the Medicaid applicant's life expectancy. So once you turn it into an annuity, you have to set it up to pay the whole thing out by the time the person who's getting the actual care from Medicaid, or the resources from Medicaid, who's covered, it has to pay all the money out by their life expectancy. It must start paying out immediately, so you can't delay on that income. It can convert roughly up to, if you count the amount of income, up to $750,000 could be converted as countable assets into non-countable income, depending on the income allowed by the states for the non-applicant spouse. That's a lot of money that could be converted. It can be funded by either qualified or non-qualified assets, depending on the state's income rules for spouses. Here are the pros and cons. They provide an opportunity to retain they provide an opportunity to retain access to your money as income in place of using it to pay for long-term care expenses. That's huge. It can be used to provide income to a non-Medicaid applicant spouse up to the spousal income limits. And the 5-year look-back rule is avoided for these assets. The con is the payout schedule must be based on life expectancy, right? Not for the rest of your life. So if that person actually lives longer than that, that money has to be spent down based on the government's life expectancy, not for their actual whole life. So the income payments are included with Social Security, pensions, and all other income sources up to the Medicaid limits. And finally, the portion of your assets that can be protected are limited by other income sources and Medicaid income limits. Well, folks, that concludes the informational part of our workshop today. But before we jump into our 6-question quiz and our Q&A for it, I want to make a very special offer to everyone that is attending. I want to offer everyone here with us as a no obligation complimentary long-term care plan analysis. And I want to take a minute to explain a little about what that entails and what you can get out of it. So this is what it entails. First, there's two ways we can actually meet to do it. The first is online using Zoom, which is almost just like how we're doing this webinar. But instead, we'll both be able to see each other and hear each other, and it will be completely private. Second, we could also meet in our office in Fort Washington, PA, which is right off the turnpike, about half hour from Philadelphia. Second, it is a 2-step process. We would meet to gather all the information that I'll need to do the analysis the first time, and the second time we meet in order to go over the results. Finally, what you can get out of this is a clear understanding of whether it would be worth it or not for you to implement one of the long-term care plans that we discussed today. And this is how we will find that out. So once I have all the pertinent information, I'll put it into our retirement planning software, which looks like this. These are the actual screenshots from inside our software. I have to put into it stuff like your name, date of birth, planned retirement year, your Social Security retirement income, pension income, investment account totals, and potential returns, your projected tax rates, now and later, after retirement, etc. Then once all that's entered into the software, then we can compare various scenarios pertaining to the different long-term care plans that I showed you earlier. To either your current long-term plan, a long-term care plan if you have one, or your plan without a long-term care if you don't have one currently. Here's an example of a client of mine that I just started the process for recently. The graphs in the green are screenshots from different scenarios that we have compared. The top graph showed currently their financial situation, which does not, in this situation, does not involve a long-term care plan. They currently have roughly $960,000 in assets. When included, they also including some income-based annuities that they have. In these scenarios, they would both end up needing 3 years in a full-scale nursing home facility prior to passing away. So in every one of these scenarios, we planned it out where they would need 3 years in a long-term care facility at roughly $100,000 per year prior to their passing away. As you can see, their assets begin to deplete quickly, and they only have about an 82% chance of successfully meeting their financial obligations up until their life expectancies, which we used as 82 for him and 85 for her. That's for the top one. The middle scenario is the same as the above, except in it, they transfer $150,000 of their assets from an investment annuity they have to a long-term care life solution like the one I showed you. As you can see, it took them from an 82% chance of financial success to a 100% chance for success and up until their life expectancies, again, which was 82 and 85. Now, the bottom graph is the same as the middle situation, where they implemented a long-term care plan, except that it includes an additional 3 years each of home health care that was added to it at $50,000 for each of them a year for both prior to entering the full-scale nursing facility. Now, even though it does not, it does cause their situation to slip a little, they still end up with a 97% chance for success even after that. So as you can see, this is a situation where they were able to just move some assets from one type of investment to another type. And by doing so, they end up with completely different results. And they can do this because they planned things out prior to running into what could have been a catastrophic financial situation for them and their family. With that all being said, I normally charge $749 for this type of analysis, but I've decided to offer this complimentary, no obligation complimentary, with no obligation and complimentary just for everyone on this webinar today. All you have to do is schedule the first meeting tonight before midnight. And Rachel will put up a 60-minute link for you to be able to do that now. However, if you don't, for some reason, you can't schedule before then, I am willing to offer it at 50% off over the next 3 days. So if you get back to us before Friday, we'll be willing to do that for half the price. Now, with that said, Rachel is going to put up a link to my calendar in our comment box right now. And as an extra bonus, if you sign up before we end the webinar, we are not only going to offer you the analysis complimentary, but we're also going to throw in there a $25 gift card for your favorite store after we complete the analysis for you. We're doing it. We're doing this as actually part of a new PLC Financial Solutions Awareness Program that we're launching in order to get our name out there to people. All right. So we are doing our 6-question quiz, pop quiz now, and then we're going to do our Q&A session. Anyone who's interested in taking us up on that offer, you can start booking your date with us on my calendar while we're doing it. Okay. Now that we have that out of the way, let's start our 6-question pop quiz and Q&A. You ready, Rachel? All right. Hope you remember them bullet points. All right, number 1. How much is the current cost for a single occupant private room at a nursing home per year? Currently. Nope, Angie, that's for Patsy got it, 102,200. Yeah, yes, that was it, Andy. Sorry about that. It's like Patsy gets us on that one. Number 2, what does Medicaid call the process of one depleting their own funds to become eligible for assistance? Spend down. Yeah, good one, Angie.
Nice.
Number 3, how much is the nominal amount of income? Now we're talking about income here that a Medicaid recipient is allowed to retain each month. Now we're talking about income. That's assets. It was so nominal. Yes, Patsy, good one. You probably spend it going out to dinner on a Friday night. Easily. Maybe to the diner like we go. Right, Rach? You're not going anywhere fancy.
No, definitely not fancy.
No. Good one, Patsy. All right, number 4. Name one form of income not counted toward your income for Medicaid eligibility. One form. Food stamps. Yes, good one, Patsy. I'll give it to somebody else if you can come up with another one. Anyone? Come on. Come on, Angie. I know you can get it. Bob hasn't answered one. I'm surprised.
Must not have taken his notes.
Must not have. All right, we'll stay with the
We're
food
good.
stamps. Okay. Number 5. What is the max amount of assets a Medicaid recipient can have for eligibility? You got this one now, Angie. Good job. And our final question, drum roll, please. What is the process called that Medicaid goes through in pursuit of reimbursement after someone passes away? Come on. I know I said bulletproof. Didn't I say bullet point for it? When they're going after their money, they're trying to get it back. When you're trying to get something back that you once had, you're doing what? Come
I don't know,
on.
Bri.
This will be the first time someone didn't get one of them. All right, I'll tell you, it's estate recovery. I know I said bullet point on that. All right, though, we got some good winners. We got still 5 out of the 6.
Yeah.
All right, what are we looking for questions, Rachel?
Okay, so I have an IRA. Can my spouse live off of it if Medicaid is paying for my long-term care coverage?
Very good question. So now we just talked about a limit, right? They're allowing them to keep up to $27,480. They keep all that. That could be in an IRA, right? Or that's the minimum. They'll allow them to keep 50% of everything that's over that, but up to $137,400. You get to keep half of that if that's in the IRA. So that's kind of how it works. Anything over that, it's got to go towards the care. All right. Anything else?
Okay, you ready for the next one?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm collecting a pension and Social Security, will Medicaid take it all in order to pay for my long-term care?
Let's look back. What were all the types of income that they counted? Was Social Security on there? Absolutely. Are pensions on there? Absolutely. Now, will they take it all? Well, it depends. It depends on how much they're, if you're married. If you're married, they're going to let your spouse, if they have no other source of income, keep $2,178 of it as a minimum. As a maximum, $3,435. So depends on what the income sources are of the spouse. If the spouse is equally employed and has a strong Social Security, has their own pension or whatever, then most likely they're going to take it all. Right? Because the spouse, they're going to count that spouse's income too in those numbers. They're most likely going to take a good bit of it though, if the spouse has any other sources of income. All right, what else?
Okay, so if I had long-term care insurance of my own and it runs out, could I still choose the nursing home that I wanted to be in?
That is an excellent question. And the unfortunate answer is once you run out and you need to apply for Medicaid, like I talked about, you have to go to a facility that accepts Medicaid. So if the facility you're at accepts it, then you're good. They don't accept it, then you don't. You're going to end up, you have to choose a place that accepts it. If all the places you like are places that accept it, then you'll end up, you'll be aces. You know, but a lot of times that's not the situation. All right, one more I think we have time for.
All right, how about if I have long-term care insurance of my own, but still end up needing Medicaid coverage, will they still take all of my assets?
Say that one more time.
Says, if I have long-term care insurance of my own, but still end up needing Medicaid coverage, will they still take all of my assets?
They will not. They will allow you to keep up to the amount that you had long-term care coverage for. So if you had good coverage and you say covered a few $100,000 worth of benefits, then you get to keep that. And then, but anything after over that, they'll go after. We got one here from Patsy. If you do the long-term care life insurance and you pass before using any of it, does it all go to the beneficiaries? That's a good question. On the long-term care life that I've seen, it's generally about 80% of it goes. About 20% ends up going out for the cost of the long-term care. If the long-term care annuities are a little bit different, they can actually, they could actually exceed the amount that you left because it's really like any other annuity. It's just holding the rider. So it's getting interest and whatnot. So if it's a long-term care life, but you got to remember it is tax-free, and it's probably likely that your beneficiaries would get about the same after they pay the taxes. So, but they will get it, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep, so that's it. All right. We also have the sources up there. Did you put them up, Rachel? Were you able to?
Yeah, I'm just about to.
Okay. All right, folks, that concludes our workshop for today. I just want to thank everyone who attended for being the type of people that care enough about themselves and their family to spend their precious time learning about this important topic. I truly commend you for that. So on behalf of my beautiful, wonderful partner in life and business, Rachel Dougherty, and myself, Brian Dougherty of PLC Financial Solutions located in Fort Washington, PA, I want to remind you that if there's anything that we've discussed for today, or anything else for that matter that you would like to discuss further with us, you can reach us at either 215-804-9708 or by phone, or at info@plcfs.com, or make it even easier and just go to our website at plcfs.com. And all our information is always there. Also, please mark on your calendar Tuesday, June 28th, next month at 7 p.m. for our next webinar. I am not announcing what that's going to be as of yet because I'm thinking about a change, but it will still be on the last Tuesday next month. Remember, we do them the last Tuesday of every month. Have a great June, and we'll see you then. Good night, folks.
Night. Thank you.